Criticism comes in many forms. A few examples would be aesthetic criticism, which is where we judge the beauty or style of something. Logical criticism, which is obviously just an objection about an idea or an argument that you feel is not rationally sound. And of course, self-criticism, which is, well, self-explanatory, but there are many others. And I think that we could all agree that criticism is an important part of our growth, not only as individuals, but as societies. I mean, come on. Think of where the US would be right now if we hadn't eventually started to criticize things like slavery. That was a very good example of moral criticism. But criticism, if not given correctly, can actually be very damaging. I'm sure we've all experienced that in one form or another at some point in our lives, whether it was our boss telling us that we did something stupid, or our coworkers saying that we screwed up, or family, or whatever. Point is, ineffective criticism is running rampant. So how do we give criticism properly? Well, that's what I'm going to be talking about in today's video. Hey everyone, Daniel here from Next Level Life, and today we're going to be talking about a great way to give constructive criticism. And we're also going to be covering a way that I've seen many people praise, but I just don't really like all that much. And I'll explain why. But first, I feel it would probably help to illustrate how effective constructive criticism and ineffective destructive criticism differ from one another. Now, destructive criticism aims to destroy the target of criticism. Its goal is to show that the point of view of someone else has absolutely no validity and lacks any merit whatsoever. It often involves personal attacks on people, but believe it or not, there are a couple of situations where it could be used well. One example would be in political or military contexts, where ideas are brought up that may put people's lives on the line unnecessarily. We don't want people to lose their lives for no good reason, and by mercilessly criticizing the idea destructively, we give ourselves a good chance of making sure that that plan never sees the light of day. And as a result, we save lives. But more often than not, destructive criticism is not a good way to go. Now, constructive criticism, on the other hand, doesn't necessarily look to say that whatever person you're giving the constructive criticism to did something wrong, or that their ideas are even completely without merit. It's just a way for you to point out that whatever goal they were trying to achieve could be achieved better or faster through a different route. Which sounds great, but so many of us are so used to hearing destructive criticism that we have a hard time thinking about criticism in any other light. And as a result, when we actually get constructive criticism, we don't always take it in the way that it was intended. But that doesn't have to be the case. So let's get into the two methods for giving constructive criticism, and I'll start with the one that I have a bit of a problem with, which is the Hamburger Method. Now, what is the Hamburger Method, you ask? Well, the Hamburger Method, also sometimes called the feedback sandwich, is where you try to embed your constructive criticism in between two compliments. For example, say Sarah was the head of a committee that organized an annual family picnic for your company. The picnic was a success and people enjoyed themselves, but it kind of broke the bank, exceeding your budget by over 35%. Using the feedback sandwich, here's how Sarah's boss might have handled the situation. Sarah's boss walks into the office and says, "Hey Sarah, our management was very impressed with the attendance at our family picnic. The weather was great and the food was even better, and the activities for the children were just wonderful. By the way, you overspent by 35%, and you should check your expenses and try to be within budget next time. But I understand you worked very hard to coordinate the logistics for everything, and I congratulate you on doing a remarkable job leading the committee and for your enthusiasm. Thank you for a job well done." Now, there are a couple of things that can go wrong with this method. One of them is that the praise can actually become so big that it obscures the criticism. Depending on how the manager actually sounded when he said it, of course, that 35% over budget criticism may not have actually stuck with Sarah. Another mistake that could occur when using this method is that the receiver, in this case Sarah, might feel that the praise is just trivial, because it doesn't take long for people to catch on to this praise, criticism, praise pattern. And once they do, it comes off as very inauthentic, because the praise is just a lead-in to the criticism. So as the employee, you're just waiting for the manager's critique as opposed to actually taking the praise to heart, even if the manager's praise was sincere. With that being said, there is another method that you could try, and I feel it's a little bit better in most situations. And that method is known as the effective feedback model. Now, the effective feedback model is a 4-step process where you start by asking the employee whether they are open to hearing some feedback. If they are, then you describe whatever specific behavior you saw that you want them to change. Once you've identified the behavior, you describe the impact that the behavior has. The fourth and final step is to discuss next steps. If you're giving corrective feedback, this is best accomplished by asking open-ended questions to encourage the employee to suggest what they can do to change their behavior. This not only empowers the employee to choose what will work best for them, but it also makes them more committed to actually going through with it. Here's an example of how this works. A manager pulls his employee to the side and says, "Hey Jack, can I give you some honest feedback?" Jack says sure, so his manager continues. "Alright, when you roll your eyes in meetings, when others are talking and you say things like, 'You guys just don't get it,' here's what happens. We end up losing really good people. And you often end up losing opportunities that you really want. Like that last move you just didn't get. I don't want that. I want to see you succeed. So is there anything you can do about this? Is there any way I can help you?" So, in my opinion, I think that's a little bit of a better way to give constructive criticism, without coming off like a jerk. If you liked this video or learned something, be sure to like and subscribe, and if you're new to the channel, you can also check out my playlist for more content. I'll leave those in the description below, but that'll do it for me today, so until next time, thanks for watching, and have a great day.